this morning as we engage in an important conversation. The title of this panel is Transforming the Legal System, the Failure of the Death Penalty, and the Power of Restorative Justice. My name is Stacy Rector, and I am the Director of Tennesseans for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, or TADP. That's a little easier. And we are really grateful to have you all here with us today, and very, very grateful to TSU, to the Department of Criminal Justice, and in particular Dr. Burris Kitchen for her hospitality, for helping us to make this happen, and for providing pizza, which we're all very grateful for. Yay for pizza! And I also want to thank Raphah Institute for their support in co-hosting the event today, and you will hear more about Raphah here shortly. I just wanted to quickly provide a framework for our conversation this morning, and part of that framework comes from my own experience of working on this issue of the death penalty for a long time now, and to change the whole legal system. And also what I've learned from an organization that I just wanted to point you all to. It's called Equal Justice USA, ejusa.org. And they have a really nice sort of summary of some of the things that we're going to be talking about, so I wanted to refer to them. What we know about our legal system today is that it is rooted in retribution and punishment. And it makes false promises to everyone who is involved and to whom harm occurs. We know that survivors of violence have unmet needs that have absolutely nothing to do with punishing someone. Our over-reliance on police and incarceration have devastated communities of color in particular, and have made us less safe. Real accountability, we believe, means taking responsibility for the harm that's been caused, working with those who've been harmed in order to figure out how to repair it, and then doing the internal work necessary to ensure that harm isn't repeated down the road. Punishment does not deliver on any of those goals. Survivors can't heal if they don't have a safe place or feel like their pain isn't understood, isn't reconciled. Communities can't thrive when they're ripped apart, whether they're ripped apart by violence or by community members who are locked away, who ultimately end up enduring more harm. Those who have done the harm need their own healing, need their own healing of their trauma if they're going to change their behavior. So in reality, a true system of justice should deliver safety, it should deliver healing, and it should deliver accountability for everyone who is impacted. But our retributive-based system does not do that. It has failed us, and if we do not figure out ways to change it, we can expect these same failed results. This is among the many reasons that I believe that the death penalty in particular is a failed policy and is the epitome of a system of retribution. The death penalty doesn't make us safer. It risks executing the innocent, as you're going to hear more about in a few minutes. It's unfairly applied and is more dependent on the size of a person's bank account, skin color, mental health status, or the county in which a person lives than it is on the crime itself. The death penalty system costs millions more to our state than the alternative sentences. And those are dollars we're spending that could be invested back into our communities to address the conditions that lead to violence and to harm, while better supporting those who are victims of violence and their need for healing. I hope that you will continue to learn and investigate about what we're going to be talking about today. And I hope as part of that, as I said, the clipboards that are going around, there's a information table in the back with another clipboard that you'll sign up to get on our email list so that we can continue to educate and activate you and folks in the community about these issues and how we can ultimately end the death penalty and have a much safer society. You also should have gotten a handout, and if you don't have it, let somebody know, raise your hand, and we'll get it to you, that says from retribution to restoration, I think, on it. Hopefully y'all have that. And though that document has QR codes for several of the organizations that are represented, so I hope you'll check that out. There's also a QR code. If anybody's interested in learning more about the legislative process and participating in that, we will have a Day on the Hill coming up in March 22nd, and you're all invited to be a part of that, and there's a QR code to register for that. And on that document, you will find the more full bios of the wonderful folks we have on the panel today who are going to be sharing their stories, and we're deeply grateful to them. These are hard stories, many of them. There is pain there, there is trauma there, and I ask that you help me to ensure that these folks feel safe and respected as they share their stories. And I'll briefly now introduce them and let you hear from them, which is why you're actually here, not to hear from me. Rafiah, there on the end, Muhammad-McCormick, is my colleague, and she serves as the Community Outreach Coordinator for TADP. She is also the mother of a son, Rodney, who was murdered in 2020, and she will share more about her experience and why she does the work that she does with us. Ashlee Sellars is the Director of Restorative Justice Initiatives at Raphah Institute. That's a very, very important organization in our community addressing issues around youth incarceration and victim trauma using restorative practices. And Ashlee also has a very powerful story to share. And here, my friend Sabrina Butler Smith, an exoneree from Mississippi's death row. She is also a member of TADP's Board of Directors, and she travels the country and the world sharing her story and urging states and nations to seek alternatives to the death penalty, a penalty that almost took her life. Each panelist will share with you for a few minutes, and then we will open it up. I hope that you'll be thinking about the questions that you want to ask. And so we will begin with Sabrina.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you guys for having me. I also appreciate you guys for coming to listen to us, because without you guys, who would we talk to, right? My name is Sabrina Butler, and in 1989, I was 17 years old and accused of killing my child. What happened was I stayed in an apartment complex where the people didn't know me over there, and I lived by myself. I've been on my own since I was 14 years old. So at the time, I had 2 children. My oldest was almost 2, and my baby was 9 months old. That particular day, being alone and being a kid, I didn't make the right decisions. Because I didn't have anybody there to guide me being that age. So one night, I put my son to sleep, and I decided I wanted to go jogging. So I put him to sleep, left him in the house, and I jogged to the end of the street. When I did that, I wasn't gone in 10 minutes. Jogged back, because where I lived, it was in a dead end. So you could see the apartments where I stayed from the end of the street to the dead end. So when I got back to the house, I kind of knew when my son would wake up, so I went in the kitchen to get a bottle first. When I did that, I went into the room, and I noticed right then he wasn't breathing. So I panicked. I didn't know what to do, and at the time, my 2-year-old was with his grandparents, so it was just me and him. So I grabbed him, and I ran outside. I didn't know what to do. It was like, I was almost 12 o'clock, midnight, and I was screaming, hollering, trying to get people that lived in that apartment complex, somebody to open the door and help me, because I didn't have a car, didn't have a phone, didn't have any of that at that time. So the first lady that came to the door, she stayed next door to me. She opened the door, but she told me that her kids was in the bed sleeping. She closed the door in my face. She didn't help me, she didn't do anything. I have never had any CPR training. I didn't know how to help him. I just knew to run with him, and that's what I did. So I ran downstairs, and I kept beating on doors, screaming, trying to get somebody, anybody to hear me. So a lady from the end apartment, she came out, she grabbed my son, she took him in, and she put him on the floor, she started CPR. When she did that, I ran outside, and I tried to get somebody else, to take us to the hospital. And I found this couple who was willing to take me. So when I went back in to get little Walter, that was his name, she told me to hold his nose, blow in his mouth, and press in his stomach. Well, she told me the wrong way. So I applied adult CPR to my son all the way to the hospital. you're scared and you don't know what to do. You just, it's just going a mile a minute. It's going, and I didn't know what to do. I was just trying to get him to breathe. So when we got to the hospital and they took him from me, the first thought came in my mind was, man, you are in trouble. That's like kids. When you get in trouble, the first thing did you put your hand in the cookie jar? What the kid do? Don't tell the truth. So the first thing I thought to do was to lie, and that's what I did. When they started asking me questions, I just came up with all kind of stuff. Because I didn't want to be, get in trouble for leaving him at the house. But I never thought that I would be charged with murder. That was the furthest thing from my mind. So they came out. They told me they couldn't save him. All these people started coming in my face, asking me all kind of questions. I don't know what I said, what I didn't say. And that began the whirlwind of me going through the troubles of being locked up. I went to the police station that night. Same thing. I didn't tell the truth. They told me to go home. So when I got home, I couldn't figure out what happened. Because at first, to me, being a 17-year-old at the time, I thought they were lying to me. You know what I'm saying? I thought they wasn't. When they told me they couldn't save him, I was saying to myself, this ain't right. This can't be, true. So I got up the next morning and I tried to find a way back to the hospital, and I did. When I got there, the detectives were there. They said, we want to take you back down for more questioning. So that's what they did. They took me to the police station, and before I could sit in the seat, they got in my face. They started yelling. They started screaming. I mean, I thought they was going to jump on me because I had never been in that type of situation before, didn't know what to do, didn't have my parents. My interrogation was over 4 hours. They were screaming, yelling, and when I was trying to tell them, when I finally decided to tell them the truth, when they asked me to write it down, they balled it up, threw that in the garbage. They just kept saying, this ain't what happened. You beat your baby. You stomped him. This is what you did. You did this, you did that. And I kept saying, that ain't what happened. But they did not want to hear what I said. The lead detective, they read me my rights. But being a child at 17 years old, never going through that, I thought you have the right to remain silent meant be quiet until spoken to. I had no clue that it meant more than that. So he wrote the statement out and shoved it in my face and told me to sign it. I just signed at the very bottom because that was the only thing that I thought that would let somebody know something is wrong, because I didn't sign on the dotted line where they told me to. And it actually helped me in the end. So that's when they charged me with capital murder. They charged me with capital murder in the course of child abuse. They charged me with a child abuse charge that wasn't even a law until 23 days after I was already incarcerated. How they do that, I don't know, but that's what they did. I sat in the county jail a year before I even seen any attorney. Didn't know where my son died from, didn't know really what the charges were. No one talked to me, except 2 days before trial. When I went to trial, I was told to sit and look at the jury. Didn't have any explanation what to do, how to do this. That's all I was told to do, look at the jury. I had an all-white jury. My alternate was black. So I knew, just being at that age, I was 18 then, I knew that they were going to throw me away. I just knew it because nobody looked like me. Everybody looked like somebody else. They didn't look like me. And I was right, because when the sentence went down, I had one attorney that was he's supposed to be a capital offense attorney, and I had a divorce attorney. He was drunk during the whole trial, popping candy in his mouth, talking about, we got this thing nipped in the bud. We don't want you to take the stand. We don't want you to do this, that. They sentenced me to die. March the 13th was my sentencing. July the 2nd was my death date of 1990. When I made it to death row, I was 19 years old. When I walked into death row, and that makes me mad and sad at the same time, because I didn't do anything wrong to deserve what they did. I walked in there, I was in a cell no bigger than your bathroom. I had roaches, rats, bugs on my tray. I had to figure out how to stay warm when it was cold. I had to figure out how to stay hot figure out, vice versa. That was one of the hardest things for me. But what was even harder was that I had nobody to talk to. I didn't know that the state had to exhaust all state remedies before they could actually carry out a death sentence. So when my date to die came, which was July the 2nd, man, I paced the floors. I listened for every chain, every sound, because I actually thought that was the day that I was going to die, because nobody said nothing. So to be put in that type of situation, innocent, knowing that you didn't do anything wrong, is that much more heightened. I saw people dying. I saw people getting beat up. I saw things that I have never seen in my life. Prison ain't what you want. I'm just here to tell you, it's not what you want. You think you can handle it, but you can't. If you ain't got a strong constitution, there's no way in this world you're gonna be able to handle what prison got to handle, what they got to offer. I sat in that jail cell 2 years and 9 months before my sentence was overturned, because I started writing and I started saying to myself, look, I can't do this. I gotta figure out what to do. Somebody, anybody gotta listen. So I started writing everybody that I thought. And my husband that's back there now, he was God sent, because he sent me a letter and he said, they can't do this. This case is not right. He came and he was the reason that I got the attorneys that I got that came in my case. When we went back to court, I found out my son had heart, kidney, and lung problems. It was nothing that I did to cause his death. It wasn't even a murder case at all. Found out that the district attorney took the jury to a picnic while they were supposed to be sequestered. He talked to all the doctors and nurses in one room. They already knew what they were gonna do before they even saw me. It was like 23 violations against him. My sentence was overturned in December the 18th. I was found not guilty, walked out in 1995. But just because you go through that, it doesn't mean that it stops there. I walked around from 1995 to 2009 without a job. Nobody would hire me, even though I'm exonerated. So your life is not all, you was exonerated, woo, woo, woo. No, I'm still dealing with psychological trauma. Didn't get any help for that. What do you do to a person when you do that to them and then you don't say, hey, I'm sorry for what I did? They didn't say that. It was just, hey, you just some black kid that you did what you wanted to do. But I got out. I got the district attorney out of office. I pounded that pavement until I got him out of office. I got a district attorney that's there now that's fair. And this is what I do. And I thank Stacy and all the people that I work with. I work with Witness to Innocence too. They are a death penalty organization. It's the first of its kind. We're all death row exonerees. We go around the world, and I'm gonna continue to talk until I can't talk no more. Until my breath fall out, I don't care. But I'm wanting to change this system because it is wrong. And it's strictly wrong for people of color. You guys can fix this. Y'all are young. Y'all can change this. It's not about picking up a gun and blowing somebody's brains out. That ain't worth for nothing. It's this. That should be your gun right here. This should be your gun. This is what you need to use. We need this, because if we don't do it, who's gonna fix it? That's my story, guys, and I hope that y'all hear something from all of us. We want to change this system. It is not right the way they have it going. The death penalty is not right. Fight for what you believe in. Don't take no for an answer. Keep going until you can't do it. I'm gonna do it. I don't care what they say. I'm gonna do it. That's me.
Amen. Thank you, Sabrina. We'll just go on down the line here, Ashlee, if you'll pick it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashlee Sellars. I use she, her pronouns. As Stacy mentioned, I'm the director over Restorative Justice Initiatives at Raphah Institute. How many people in the room have heard about restorative justice? By show of hands.
And not just for me a few minutes ago.
Okay. So we do have a good amount of hands in the room. Has anybody heard about restorative justice outside of the education system? Can I get a show of hands? 2, 3. So we had 3 people out of the individuals here. So when we talk about restorative justice at Raphah Institute, we talk about that with a different lens. We talk about that in really meeting the needs of all of the people that are harmed. That's across the board. We consider ourselves to be a victim-centered organization that really says, why is somebody causing the harm in the community, and how is that impacting not only the person that was harmed, but our community as a whole? Stacy also mentioned the amount of, and Sabrina also talked about who is incarcerated. Exclamation point 1,000 times. Black and brown people are incarcerated at a higher rate than anybody else. The system is set up to target Black and brown bodies. We are talking about a power struggle. We are talking about money. We are talking about slavery transformed into new ways of controlling, right? This is something that everybody on this campus needs to be involved in, because the majority of people on this campus are Black or brown. This is a conversation we need to be having at a much, much larger scale. I come into this space and I feel really comfortable in saying that. I step into spaces, I recognize that I'm a white woman. I was incarcerated for over 21 years. The majority of people that I was incarcerated with, black and brown women. I have seen what happens, I've heard their stories, and I have their support in stepping into the space and speaking as freely as I do in some spaces. So I thank you for your grace, and I know that some of the things I may say may sound weird coming from a white woman, but I just want you to know that I got my street cred, okay? Like, I got my people saying that this is the space and that this is what they want me to be talking about. So I come into that space recognizing my privilege and knowing that I am one of the people that need to be speaking up, saying, as a white woman, I know that things are wrong and we have to do something different about it, okay? So, how many people in this room know something about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? You gotta learn it. Adverse childhood experiences. Doesn't matter what field you go into, you need to know it just for your social life in the way that you move. So please write it down, please look it up. I will tell you that there is a list of 10 things that say, if you check these boxes, you are more likely to die an early death than other people. And I will tell you that depending upon how honest I am on a given day, my score is between 9 to 10, which means I should have a shorter life expectancy, right? So I was experienced abuse from as early as I can remember, and eventually ended up continuing to leave my household. Sabrina talked about that too, being on their own at a very early age. I came into that space like, how do I live? How do I survive? Really just putting one foot in front of the other. I ended up staying with someone who was selling drugs. The majority of people I were around were either affiliated, had guns, were robbing, selling dope, something, right? And so I had a friend of mine who asked me one night, like, I was living with him. He asked me, he said, well, I want you to drive me somewhere. Okay, bet, right? So I drove, parked my car, he got out of my car, was gone for a period of time, came back, got back in my car, and I said, did I hear a gunshot? And he was like, yeah. And I knew in that moment that somebody had died. And in honesty, I sit here and tell you that the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh my God, what happens to me? What happens to me? Because I can't go back to my house. Regardless on what is happening with this particular peer group, this was still safer for me than what I had been experiencing in my home life. And so, in selfishness, my response was, what is gonna happen to me? And so I kept my mouth shut, and I never said anything to anybody. Several days later, we were arrested. I was facing life in prison in Tennessee, which is 60 years, plus 25. So, 85-year sentence as a 17-year-old who had never had any supports in any way. I had been assaulted, and this happened in December of 1995. In October of 1995, I was sexually assaulted by someone. I defended myself, and I called the cops. The cops came, and they released me right back into the custody of that household without ever asking me if I was okay or if I needed any services. Without exploring that household and seeing if that was safe for me, they released me right back into that space. I also want to tell you that when I sit before you today, I'm an example of all of the people who are incarcerated. I have never met anyone incarcerated who did not have a very high ACE score, who had not experienced trauma, who had not experienced abuse, physical, sexual, mental, all of it. This is a space that we are now throwing our people away because we aren't addressing the needs that are happening, right? So I was incarcerated for almost 3 years. I saw my attorneys a handful of times. I spent the majority of that time in solitary confinement because they didn't know what to do with me. When I turned 18, they transferred me into a higher security facility and kept me on lockdown then because I had a homicide charge, right? And I'm still not speaking to anybody. My attorney comes to me and says, I want you to take a plea. I said, I'm not taking a plea, I didn't do anything. That's not what I'm doing. I'm going to court, I want to talk to a jury, ignorant, right? I didn't know my rights, I didn't know any of the things, how anything was supposed to look like, I didn't know anything. My mother comes to the jail and says, they told me you need to take this plea or I will never see you outside of prison. Regardless of the trauma that happened in my life, my mama is still my mama, right? And I still leaned in the space of, I've been protecting my mom in some way throughout my entire life, and I just gotta step up now and do the same thing. You know? The majority of people that I've been locked up with have talked about loyalty too, and I've asked them every time, like, who's showing up for you? I talk to the kids in detention in Davidson County now. The first thing, what's most important to you? Loyalty. I said, who's showing up for you? Nobody. Nobody's calling, no one's accepting their phone calls, no one's putting money on their books, no one's coming to see them, right? When we talk about loyalty, we need to talk about who we're loyal to and what that means. And I'm not talking about snitching. I'm just talking about recognizing who really has our backs and what that means, right? So I go into court. No one had ever said to me, do you know that there's a victim? Do you know who they are? Have you thought about their parents? Have you thought about their friends? Have you thought about their life? Have you thought about anything that has to do with that individual who lost their life? No one ever said that to me. And so I go in the courtroom, and when you go in the courtroom, you can't do anything, right? Like, I can't smile because then I'm crazy. I can't cry because then I'm guilty, right? There's no response that you're able to have in that court system, and it's set up in that way so that they continue to justify the reason that they do what they do. They use language to continue to perpetuate it being okay. If you saw me as a child, it would have been harder for you to give me a life sentence. If you see me as a murderer, as an offender, as a felon, as whatever the word is, it gives you justification to treat people in the ways that we treat them. So we have to do a language shift, right? So at that moment, I all of a sudden saw two people stand up and start talking about what a horrible human being I was. They talked about how I had never taken any accountability, I had never shown any remorse, and I deserved to spend the rest of my life in prison. And immediately I raised my hand, and immediately the judge said, what are you doing? That's not a space that this can happen in, right? And the family said, I didn't know that's who it was. The family said, I want to have a conversation with her. And so I went behind closed doors with a mother and a father who had had their daughter murdered and who believed I was the one that participated in her death. And I did not say to them, do you know ACEs? Do you know any of this stuff? Do you know my traumas? Do you know what I did or didn't do? I told them specifically, your daughter's death saved my life. And that was true for me. I'd already taken a plea for 25 years before they gave their statement. And immediately when I said, your daughter's death saved my life, they grabbed me, they hugged me, they cried with me, and they prayed with me. I went from seeing somebody who was extremely angry, rightfully so, extremely hurt, in a place of not knowing how to process any of their emotions, to who said, baby, like, come here. Just come here. Again, this had been almost 3 years, and they had brought a token with them, I assume, to remember their daughter, right? I can't imagine something happening and me thinking for 3 years when I finally get my opportunity to say something, what am I going to do? What am I going to bring? What is theirs? What is important? And they brought a cross. Her name was Cynthia. They brought a cross that Cynthia used to wear, and they gave it to me as a gift. Right? We are talking about split-second conversation, and there was this immense healing that happened in some ways for both of them. One, they were able to see me as human, which was really important to me, and they were able to see me as human, which I think was really important for them. Right? And so when I come into this, so I spent over 21 years in prison. I came home in 2017. I come into this space that if I spent over 20 years of my life in prison and I don't do anything with those experiences, then I continue to perpetuate a harm. I need to use all of my experiences to keep young people or anybody else from causing harm in our community. I need to support people in our community that have had harm happen to them. And I need to continue these conversations so that we have legislative and just communal understanding about what we need to do and how we need to show up. You can't hold somebody accountable. You have to teach accountability. We have to learn that together. It's really difficult to sit with somebody and say, you know what, I hurt you. Can you tell me what I did to you? I'm gonna listen to that. And I'm gonna tell you how that feels, and I'm gonna tell you why. I never had rehabilitation opportunities in the correctional system. It was something where I had to decide what I wanted to do. I had to fight for myself in those particular ways. And so yes, I come into this work facilitating conversations between people in the community that have caused felony harm and the people who have experienced harm. We work with everything from an auto burglary or a car theft all the way up to homicide. Currently moving into Shelby County, right? And just continuing to advance that. So I come into the space just really in a healing space, wanting to participate alongside people who are on their healing journey on both sides of that spectrum. And I'm very grateful to be here today.
Thank you so much, Ashlee. Rafiah?
You're going to have to give me a moment.
Sure.
this space, well, new in that my trauma was pretty recent. And in listening both of y'all stories today, even though I've listened to them before, it brought back being a teenage mother. It brought back being the mother and thinking about the harm and what was the feelings. Because I still haven't talked to the young man that took my son's life, even though we have done the restorative process. But my name is Rafiah Muhammad-McCormick. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. And I lost my son to gun violence July 9th of 2020. So almost 3 years ago, in July of this year. And you probably think it's strange that a person that has lost something so precious will be in a space of looking to do something different in this criminal justice system. Like Sabrina, I was a teenage parent. I had 4 kids before I was 21 years old. I had lived in the projects, I had lived in the hood, I had knew individuals that were most likely on the side of harming people. And in fact, at that time, I had, at that time it was easy money if you can get into being a corrections officer. And so I had went to school to try to get my corrections certificate. And as I'm sitting in the classrooms, I was, and learning about it, I started thinking about what we were being taught. There was nothing about correction or healing or counseling. It was very, look, this is the individual, and to be honest, this is back in 1990. The person that looks like who you chasing after is a black male in a hoodie. That's your target. That's who you're going over, that's who you're looking to lock up. That was what we were taught. And so I got my certificate, and I was like, I cannot work in the criminal justice system because that's how we teaching people. I don't want to do it. So I was like, I got to figure out how I'm gonna take care of all these kids, because I had a lot of them. And so I got into the manufacturing plant and was working on the punch line, and that repetitive work kind of drove me crazy. But I was like, I got to feed these kids, and so fortunately, I had one of those engineering type brains apparently, and I learned how to get my machine back up and running really quickly. And I also learned, I was real tiny, I would load these door panels, and most of the people that worked on this machine were men. So when they would go to load them, they, use their arm, and that's how they taught me, and I would fall into the machine every single time I would load them. And so I learned how to do it really quickly, and got the attention of upper management. They was like, oh my gosh, she can punch all these door panels. And so, started speaking to them, and they put me in the leadership programs, and I made it, and got my engineering, became an engineer without a degree before I was 30 years old with 4 kids. So I was like, okay, I made it, life's good. And worked in the automotive field for 25 plus years, did project management, top level management. Then left the hood a long time ago, and on July 9th, 2020, as I came home from work to my suburban home with our privacy fenced backyard, my son was having a pool party. He had a couple of friends over, and I remember seeing them piling into the backyard. It was they were couples. It was 6 of them, 3 couples. And I go in the house, and I'm like, man, Rodney, I don't feel like dealing with company today. He was like, no, don't worry, they ain't gonna be here that long. It's just a couple of us. And, I looked in the backyard, and I'm like, those girls and guys, they were laughing around the fire pit. My son was primping in the mirror, to look cute for the girls. And so I didn't want to take that away from him. I said, okay, I'm gonna take a little nap. When I wake up, make sure they're gone. And about a half an hour later, I woke up to the gunshots. Rodney had got into an argument with one of his guests, and the young man shot at him 5 times, hitting him 3. When I came outside, everybody else had left. Rodney and the boy who had shot him. I didn't even realize Rodney had been shot. I thought they were wrestling. I separated them, and Rodney fell to the ground. And before the young man ran out the backyard, we had made eye contact. And I saw for an instant before he left a scared little boy. And it was just an instant. I don't even think I even focused on that at the time. Later on that night, the young man turned himself in for second-degree murder. However, unfortunately, while we were going through navigating the court proceedings, initially, as the prosecutor is preparing me for the case and our family, he did this, there was no reason for him to do it. We're gonna get him, X amount of time. And then every single month that went by, or every single time we would go back to court, it would chip away at what we were looking at. Oh, well, he's never did anything before, and none of the other witnesses are going to come forward. The young people were friends with my son, and they were friends with the boy who had killed him. I would see on their Facebook page, long live RA, long live Rodney Armstrong, and then at the same time, free the person that had killed him. I was like, how can you be on the same side? I didn't understand it. And I was angry while we were going through the court proceedings. At the end, when we were getting ready to start, he offered a plea of voluntary manslaughter, and we chose to take it, thinking that he was going to get an extraordinarily, 15 plus years. And then finding out that since he had never committed a crime before, that he might not have to do as long. And what changed my whole mentality was when the prosecutor said to me, don't worry, he'll do something else and he'll serve the remaining of his time. And I thought in that moment, I said, because a lot of times when somebody harms you, your automatic thought process is that you want punishment, you want revenge, you want eye for eye, you want blood for blood, you want tooth for tooth. But in that moment, and I thought about it, I was like, I never want him to harm anybody again. And no matter how many years he got in prison, if I didn't change him, the potential for harm was there. And so I was like, okay, we'll take the plea agreement. We won't fight you on the plea agreement, but I asked for something additional on top of it. I didn't even know what restorative justice was at the time. But I asked for the young man to have to be counseled while he's incarcerated with a group of individuals that work with individuals that have already done harm or are at risk of doing harm, called Nashville Peacemakers. I'm also a member of Mothers Over Murder, other mothers who have lost their children. And so I requested that he sit in circle with us so he could see what he done to take account for that. And that eventually one day we hope that he'll be able to mentor other youth. And then I found out about, when I was going through the restorative process, I met Ashlee and working on some different things. And then this opportunity came up about the death penalty. And I don't know about those of you, and I'm going to speak in specifically to African Americans, because as an African American, for me, the death penalty, I wasn't a pro-death penalty, but for me it was out of sight, out of mind. I didn't think about it as, in my mind, my ignorant mind, I was like, well, them people that kill people that's on death row, everybody that's on there is on there for doing something that's totally, totally, totally horrific. They're the worst of the worst that's on there. They're doing the worst things in the world. And so that's don't have nothing to do with us. And then as I started getting educated of the systemic racism, roots in lynching, how when the death penalty first started in America, that predominantly slaves were being executed. And that the only reason that they got rid of the death penalty initially is because the state didn't want to play the slave owner for property. And so then lynching took over. And then because after slavery, lynching became so widespread that a president, to appeal to people to get rid of lynching, let's reinstate the death penalty. But don't worry, we're going to still kill those black people because we know that they're the main people that are raping our white women. When I found out that the majority of the individuals that were on death row were black and brown people that didn't have appropriate representation, that were from particular areas, most of them being in this state, in Tennessee, from Shelby County. When I thought about the fact that not only is the individual that's on death row impacted, about his family is impacted, the victim's family is impacted. It, for me, accountability for me was not gonna come with your body. Accountability for me is not gonna come with your body because you can't bring my baby back. And trading your life for him ain't gonna bring my baby back. So in my mind, I was like, what can he do? For me, the only way that I could feel that it was not in vain is the person that took life could give back life through saving life, through being healed, through healing other people that he's incarcerated with, through healing his family members, through those victims being able to move past that anger and reach across and say, I might not be ready to totally forgive, but I'm ready to understand why you did what you did. Let's come together so we can prevent anybody else from killing somebody. That's what made the difference for me, and that's why I'm in this movement.
Wow, thank you all. I know this is really hard, painful stuff, and so I just want to say thank you to all three of you for being willing to share that with us. It's a very special thing that you do, and we appreciate it. Using your pain and your own experiences to help us learn and grow and hopefully change that pain for other people. I want to stop now. We have about 15 minutes, I think, left, or there, give or take. Are there questions for folks? Are there comments, thoughts, anything anybody wants to ask or share?
I also want to see if, I know I invited to see if someone wanted to do a poetry reading on the topic, and I don't know if anybody showed up. Is there anyone from Soulfire here that was going to do? I just wanted to give them an opportunity if they did show up, but I guess no one showed up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all for sharing. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful message. And, I'll keep you all in my thoughts and prayers after this. One of the things, I worked 3 years at the Davidson County Sheriff's Office with juveniles that had been, their cases had been adjudicated in juvenile court, and they were being tried as an adult. And out of those 3 years that I worked with those adolescents, I did counseling, and all of them were African Americans except one white male. And working with them, I discovered all the trauma they had experienced. All of them grew up in either a foster care system or they grew up in group homes. Or they were on the streets from the ages of 13 to 14. And something else that was surprising me, because I think one of you from Shelby County, do you know that more adolescents that are in the Tennessee correction system now come from Shelby County than any part of the state of Tennessee? Now, Nashville, they'll do their part too, brings more adolescents, you know, to prison. And, you know, I know that that trauma that they have experienced is never treated. You know, I just, you know, put a little dent in it in my work with the, you know, the juveniles. But, you know, it's sad.
Yeah, no, go ahead, and I'll follow up with you.
So, yeah, so Shelby County does transfer more youth into the adult system than any other county in Tennessee. They are also 100% black,
Yes.
right? Davidson
Right.
County Judge Sheila Calloway transfers a fraction of young people. Judge actually tries to be extremely restorative. She's tried creating different diversions. She's tried doing multiple, just a different holistic approach there. I will also say when we talk about the people in this room and the people on this campus, like your voice, your vote, like I cannot tell you how important that is. You've heard all of us talk about like black and brown bodies in that particular space. Currently, juvenile court judges have the ability to be able to say what will happen with youth in their particular facility or within that juvenile court system. Currently, Shelby County has disrupted. The previous administration has now brought in a new judge and a new DA, both of which are restorative, both of which are wanting different outcomes. And now the legislation, predominantly white body, is now saying, you know what, these juvenile court judges, they're getting away with a little bit too much, they got a little bit too much power. Now let us pass legislation that says these juvenile court judges can no longer make these decisions, and we will automatically transfer these young people into the adult system. So we're talking about juvenile court judges currently look at their ACEs. They look at if they've ever been in trouble before. They look at how much time they would be able to stay in the juvenile system. The juvenile system, currently Judge Calloway is helping push legislation that would allow kids to fall in the juvenile system for brain science, which means extending the age to the age of 25, right? So here again, you have people in community saying we want something different. They elect different people to represent them, to put them in these particular spaces, and then you have them making changes predominantly for black and brown people, and then you have white man on the hill that says, no, you know what, you getting too big for your pants, we're gonna strip you of your power. And y'all are the ones that are able to help disrupt that. So everything that is happening is super important to all of our communities. Like this is one community, right? And so I just encourage you to know what's happening, use your voice, use your vote.
Yeah, on top of using vote, we talked about lobbying day. We're coming up on lobbying day with us March 22nd. One of the legislations that we're working on this year is gonna be victims' compensation. We were able to, even though we're with the death penalty, our main focus is, yes, we want to abolish the death penalty, but why? Is because the system is broken, and because of the fact that those resources will be better allocated actually preventing crime. I got real sick and damn tired of legislation being passed and my victim's voice being the one to be used to justify death penalty, to justify throwing away the key. But yet no money is being put into DCSS. No money is being put into juvenile justice. When we talk about a broken juvenile justice system, instead of them working on trying to put a more humane approach and actually counsel these kids, they looking for, oh, we're not gonna wanna, let's take them out of juvenile and put them in prison, in adult prison.
And that destroys them.
Exactly.
If we keep doing the same things, then we're gonna keep farming, we're gonna keep growing more harmed people. We're gonna keep growing more children that are more broken. And when we're sitting here wondering what's happening to the world, oh, it's social media, oh, it's video games, oh, it's gun laws. No, because you don't traumatize everybody, and now nobody has value for life.
Right. And you know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different
Yeah.
That's right. And I was just gonna piggyback on, amen to everything that's being said. And I do think, and I actually have a document back there, I don't think I put it out, but I'll put it out so that if y'all wanna take it. And Ashlee alluded to it, the power of the prosecutor's offices and how huge that is. The fact that we were a part of the education process in Shelby County around the power of the prosecutor, which educated the citizens about how important their vote was to look at the policies any given prosecutor says they're gonna implement. And if you don't like those policies, you need to choose somebody else, right? And that's what the people of Shelby County did. And it's gonna have a tremendous impact I mean, I can't even speak. I mean, you've heard about the juvenile situation and all the kids. Half of our death row comes from Shelby County. There's so many things that have been going on, as we know, in Shelby County that are going to be directly impacted by a different mentality, a different approach. And what you see is the backlash to that. It doesn't change the fact, though, and you want to be educated. You want to know what's going on at the legislature so you can get involved. And you also, in your local communities, whether you live in Nashville or any place, know when elections are coming up, know who's running, know what they stand for, and vote. Because those local elections make and you can pass laws, but if we're changing this county by county by county, there's going to be more and more pressure on the legislature to back off, right? So anyway, it's just a lesson in how important those local races are, how important knowing who the people are that are running and what they stand for and what they believe, particularly around the legal system. It makes a huge, huge difference. Laramie. Please. Yeah. Laramie's from Shelby County.
I live in Memphis. Yeah, I've been there 12 years. And Amy Wyrick is actually the DA that we just voted out. And I think it's between 2017 and 2021, she transferred upwards of 250 juveniles, 99 to 100% black, to adult court. So that could be like an 11-year-old, which we do have an 11-year-old who's facing probably life in prison right now. With, it's like what attempt to rehabilitate and change the trajectory have we actually made. But I'm in city council meetings, and a lot of the mindset with MPD and our police director is basically just putting band-aids on things and more cameras, which cameras don't prevent anything from happening, they just record it. But Amy was in office for 8 years, and everyone in the world has heard about Tyree Nichols. Had she been in office, those 5 officers would still be doing their job. And so your vote absolutely matters, because Amy, I believe when she actually ran, the term for the DA in Shelby County is 8 years, which is ridiculous, but she was essentially grandfathered in because nobody really showed up to vote. So Steve Mulroy, we got him in by pushing, and he's for bail reform. I do court watch with Just City, and I was in court a couple weeks ago observing a judge, and a white man who had assaulted an EMT had a bail set of $5,000. He was intoxicated in public, assaulted a first responder, and then after him, a young black man was up for, I think, just having a medication on his person that was not legal in the state, and his bond was set at $6,000. And so when you think about public safety and who is a threat to public safety, somebody who assaults individuals while drunk versus somebody who probably had like a gram of medical marijuana or something that's just not legal in Tennessee, and so bail reform and how it affects people of color, like all of those things are so important. But you have to get in and push, and voting super matters, and putting yourselves, which I'm a white woman, so I have to do that, putting yourself in situations that would otherwise not really happen around you, and observe and see where the need is, because you can make the change, but it has to come from the inside. And so change is possible.
I just have to add, my name is Bailey. I work with Ashlee at Raphah. I think if I could add a zillion exclamation points also to what I think you all mentioned, but I know Ashlee really called it out, the ACEs, and just thinking about sort of all of these things coming together, one being like voting and your involvement in all these systems that are built a specific way, but also like how important it is on learning about brain science and toxic stress. I think about Memphis, especially when you think about like any geographic area that has like a large area of concentrated poverty, where people are living to survive, babies raised in survival modes, brains form differently. So they physically form differently, they form to survive. And so when thinking about like acting with a brain that has developed to do a specific thing, I think yes to counseling, yes to therapy, yes to all this like lens on everything, but like, I can't counsel your brain to form differently once it has already lived under toxic stress for a certain period of time, from birth to 5, like that is huge. And so thinking about every single system that touches a child education, like having putting so much emphasis on like learning about toxic stress, about brain science, about ACEs, and how all of us in every role that we play come in contact with people, how important that is, I think is really valuable to talk about these two things together, right? The brain and our systems.
Okay, I thought I saw a hand up here, but if you and then the next person, yes.
Hi, my name is Ayana Brazel. I'm a junior criminal justice major at Tennessee State University. And I really, I was touched by everybody who spoke. I want to say thank you for coming to speak to this. Last semester, I actually wrote a reform paper for Mr. Montgomery's class on capital punishment. So it was just kind of ironic that I came today. And I'm actually very glad that I came. I came for extra credit for Ms. Decorator's kitchen. And so, yeah, it was kind of crazy. But, yeah, so I was looking back on my paper that I wrote last semester, and I was completely against the death penalty. I feel like there's no reason for it to exist. I feel like it only takes away from money from the state. Also, I feel that it's not an effective form of rehabilitation. It's not an effective form of deterrence. It's not an effective form of restoration. Anything that the criminal justice system is supposed to restore. Yes, thanks. So I wanted to say though, I am like deeply passionate about changing the criminal justice system. Like that's the reason why I want to be a defense attorney. That's the reason why I am a criminal justice major. I believe like everybody deserves a second chance. I believe we're all so close. Even if you are a judge, even if you are a politician, a senator, everybody is literally 3 seconds away from being placed in jail for a crime. Anything, literally anything. And then being an African American, you are like 1 second away from being placed in jail, literally. So my issue is kind of like, because I have several issues that going on with legislation, particularly in Tennessee. I want to kind of piggyback off what she was saying, as far as she was talking about like adolescence. Like she spoke on adverse trauma. Like I actually went through my own trauma, and I know plenty. Every African American that I've ever encountered in my life, I would think would have trauma based on experience of where I'm from and where they are from. And so I believe there is a school to prison pipeline affecting African Americans all over the world. And also there are many legislations going on right now to affect African Americans in the education system before they even get to prison. So like we have a complete entire like system like from 3rd grade that automatically puts us in prison. And so it's like we have so we come here like me being I guess privileged enough to not be placed in the education system, or my teachers being able to see that I wasn't a child that they should have outcasted. But later being a child that I've had trauma like early on at an early age, like 3 years old, I would have been outcasted and put into a society where I probably would have been dictated to go to jail. So I feel like I want to do something. I want to make change. I always give like voting. We need to vote. Like we need to vote on election. My thing is nobody's interested in voting unless it's presidential election. And so my question is like, how do we get like us, like our community, like our students, like our like my fellow peers interested in actually like moving legislation? Like I can encourage people to come to the Q like on March 22nd, and that's fine and dandy, and there'll probably be a lot of like students there, but like past that like lobbying and actually like getting stuff done, like I don't know how to like activate interest, like even in myself, because I've never even voted. I've only voted in a presidential election, like to be honest. Like I've never voted on a local election, and I'm in college. Like I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, so how do I vote in Tennessee like for local elections, like while I'm here, or go back home vote on elections in Ohio, because like she was talking about, like we need to be educated like at a young age, because kids go through trauma and stuff like that, and it's literally like I'm not trying to be redundant, but it's literally like we like right now in Tennessee, like they have legislation in Davidson County, I think Shelby County, that are banning African American books that are teaching on race. So it's like everywhere we are hit, everywhere, and we need to hit legislation, but it's like, what do we hit before we hit legislation? That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
My only idea though that I had was that, you know, we have a lot of politicians that come out and they say what they're gonna do, right? But nobody hardly ever comes into our community. Nobody. You gotta start somewhere. We don't even have nothing for young people to do. You don't have playgrounds. You go into white communities, they got lovely playgrounds and parks and things for their children to do. Go in the black community, the streets are nasty. The grocery stores look a hot mess. You're scared to go in there. You think you're gonna get robbed on the corner. The kids don't have anywhere to play, nothing. If you want us to be interested, how come we can't have the same thing? Why can't you make our communities the same way? They got street sweepers over here. I ain't never seen no street sweeper in my community. I've never seen that. So what I'm saying is, in order to reach us, you gotta join us. You gotta come into the community and do something. Make them believe. Because we don't believe. We think, a lot of us think, now I'm speaking for me for sure. A lot of us think, oh, we're nobody. They don't care. You know, so we do whatever. Real talk. We do whatever. Because we're not gonna get what they got. That's the way they see it, the young kids. They see it like that. Man, we're not gonna get what so-and-so over there, what little Susie got. Little Susie got it going on, but we ain't gonna get that. So we gonna figure out what else to do. Because we don't have the things that we should have in our communities. Now that's the way I feel. I don't know about anybody else. But that's the only thing I can say. They need to meet us where we are, and they don't do that.
Can I offer another maybe perspective? I think, even if we look at the room today, how many criminal justice majors are on campus, right? And yet this is the population that showed up.
Right.
I do wonder what it looks like just to go to your peers and say, this is an issue that applies to everybody on this campus, and you have chosen a particular major. Why didn't you show up, or what would have it taken for you to show up? It wasn't pizza and it wasn't extra credit, right?
Why not?
So what does it look like, right? What's the question? You know, what is it that you need to show up? What is it that you need to care? We are older than you are, right? And it isn't fair for us to come in and say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. You need to talk to your community specifically and say, what is it that is your interest, and how do we do something about it? Because I can stand with you and help you organize, but you're gonna have to organize in what is appropriate for your peers. I can't come into this community and say, no, you will do it this way because this is what works, because we're different generations. I can just support you in the things that I know, right? But it is you and your peers. Y'all have got different thoughts, and y'all are so smart. Y'all have got different insights. Y'all have got different mediums. Y'all have got different, across the board that we didn't have. Yep. And I couldn't sit here and think about, I could do this on social media, or I could do that. Ooh, what if we do this? I can't.
I don't even know what the emojis mean.
Right, I don't even.
It's funny because
I don't have those experiences.
They know what they mean.
Yeah.
I don't
even
have
know
those
what it
experiences.
means.
You are the leader in the space. So
Emoji
very, very simple. What I would say, ask your peers.
Yeah.
Ask your peers why they didn't show up. Ask your peers what it would have taken for them to show up. Find out what the issues are, and then figure out how to mobilize around it.
Yeah. And you got to stay interested.
Yeah. And I'll help. If there's anything I can do to help, I'll help.
Yeah, stay interested.
Yeah.
We're a little bit over
definitely.
time. Are folks okay to hang out a little bit more?
Okay.
We've got a couple more questions, I think. Okay.